How are you? Good. Nice to see you. I'm going to call you up, okay? Okay. All right.
Ready?
Ready?
Okay.
Yeah.
Please stand for the presentation of the colors by Encinitas Boy Scout Troop 777. Colors of attention. Colors of advance. Colors of present the colors. This one is in the north. This one is part of the region.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good job, guys.
I know I'm touchy and everything. I wanted to, first of all, thank you all for all of your flexibility since this town hall was going to be a few weeks ago. We appreciate you continuing to show us these able to postpone it for a very good reason, which the congressman will talk about. And I do want to thank you for spending your Tuesday evening with us. There are a lot of other things you could be at home doing, including your kid, children in conflict. Apparently, a lot of people have, a lot of you have been, but you could be enjoying your evening with your families, and we do appreciate you still being here. Please sit. Sorry about that. I feel like I probably know half of you because I'm with Theo Healy. I do organize the town halls, and I think I've communicated with half of you by email over the last couple of days, sorting out tickets and location and all of the work. So, again, thank you for being here. Nice to see you. I will, at this point, pass you on to the congressman. We'll get this started.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, let's start by giving Misty and the whole team a round of applause for all their help. They are amazing. I'm really grateful for everybody's flexibility as well. You know, we were supposed to do this a week or 10 days ago on a Saturday, and I wound up being in D.C. flying back, and as I remember, didn't get home until pretty late that Saturday evening. So I'm grateful for everyone's flexibility. When I started running for Congress, I said I would hold at least one town hall a month. And I'm really proud that we've done that. In fact, this is our 91st town hall. Thank you. We did them in person all throughout 2019 and into the beginning of 2020. And then when COVID hit, we brought epidemiologists and others to do as many of the virtual town halls as we could. And now we're back in person for the last several. And I will do one a month for as long as I have the opportunity to serve. It's the very least that I can do. In addition to that, we do house parties all over the district, and I think we're around 250-something. But I'm very, thank you. But I'm very, very proud of that. But I can't do that on my own. It takes an extraordinarily hardworking group of people, many of whom are here. And I'm just incredibly grateful to our whole campaign team. And they are working very, very hard with, I believe, 77 days to go before the election. I think you're all going to receive your ballot in 48 days. Did I get that right? That's good. I don't want to mess that up. All right. So it's a busy time, but it's an exciting time. Before going any further, I want to introduce some wonderful, wonderful elected officials here in the city of Encinitas. We've got Joy Lins from D3. Thank you, council member, for being here. Joe Mosca from D4. Thank you, Joe. And I think Tony Kranz is planning to come. I hope he does, because I hope you get to hear or get to meet Tony. And Kelly Hinsey, I think, is coming as well, I hope. She has a 2-week-old baby, so she will not be appearing at the town hall. But for Kelly, if you're watching, we love you and congratulations. But one of the really important things for me as a federal representative is that we have great partners at the state level. And I have had the opportunity and the great privilege to work with Mayor Catherine Blakespear for these last 3.5 years. She has been a tremendous partner as it pertains to all things Encinitas and really all throughout our district due to her service on SANDAG as chair of the board of the Regional Planning Organization for Transportation. A great leader on climate and energy and so many other things. She's going to be a great, great advocate for us all in Sacramento. So I hope you will welcome her with the same enthusiasm that you welcomed me. Please welcome Catherine Blakespear to say a few words.
Very nice of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
2 minutes, 2 minutes.
You got it.
Well, welcome, everybody. Hello, aren't we excited to be here with the congressman?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm excited. So my name is Catherine Blakespear, and it's my great honor and privilege to serve as the mayor here in this city where we're hosting our incredible congressman tonight, and to be here with my 2 elected colleagues. We all support our congressman, and we're really excited to hear what he's going to share with us tonight. And I just want to say that as a representative of the city of Encinitas, bringing him here and having him represent the residents, we could not have a better representative. So somebody who's so hardworking, who's so diligent, who is so intellectual, who comes with the background of being a practicing attorney in environmental law, he's able to be a leader on the things that we care about and our values. And he brings dollars back to the district. So we have projects in our city and throughout this district because of the advocacy of the congressman. So I'm really excited to turn it over to him. I won't talk for too long, and I just want to say thank you again for coming to the city of Encinitas tonight.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you so much. Thank you. We're going to have a great, great partner in Sacramento with State Senator Catherine Blakespear in the 38th District. Did I get that right? Excellent. All right. So I have a lot of exciting updates to share. This is really going to be fun because since I saw everybody last, we have had some really big things happen in Washington, D.C. There's a bill called the Inflation Reduction Act. Hopefully you've heard of that. There's another one called the CHIPS and Science Act, and another one called the Honoring Our Pact Act for our veterans. And all of them have been signed into law since our last town hall meeting just a month ago. And I'm really excited to talk about what these bills mean for you and for your family. Look, our country continues to navigate through a very tumultuous period, but I am more hopeful than I have been in a long time. In fact, when it comes to things like climate policy, I'm more hopeful than I've ever been in my adult lifetime about what we can achieve, particularly what a community like ours can achieve when we work together, when we try to work across the aisle whenever we can, and when we focus on delivering community results. And that's what we've done, and that's what we're going to continue to do. We've delivered results in many different ways. I'll just share a few with you right now, and then we'll talk about those 3 bills. When it comes to San Onofre, we are delivering results. We were able to get $40 million, $20 million last year, $20 million this year, for the Department of Energy to restart the process to find a new location to send the nation's spent nuclear fuel. Now, I say the nation's spent nuclear fuel because what we have down on the beach at San Onofre, at Songs, is really the symptom of a bigger problem. The bigger problem is we have over 80 sites in 34 states and nowhere to send any of it. That's why I created a bipartisan caucus with my colleagues, Republicans and Democrats alike, to actually take action on the issue. And we created also a series of bills after we empowered a task force of local leaders, one of which is called the Spent Fuel Prioritization Act, which says for all the nation's nuclear waste, move the waste first from those with the highest seismic risk, the highest population density, and the highest national security concerns. Guess what? We win. It's not something I like to win at, but it's true. My Republican co-lead, showing you that bipartisanship is alive and well when it comes to our office, our Republican co-lead on that effort is Darrell Eisen. Some of you are familiar with him. No. On this, Darrell and I don't agree on everything. But on this, we are in direct agreement. We are in complete agreement that we have to work together, Republicans and Democrats, to get that waste off our coast and to find a nationwide solution for it. We've delivered results when it comes to protecting our coastline. We are so incredibly fortunate to live in one of the most beautiful places on the planet. My district goes all the way up to Dana Point, now has Laguna Niguel. That's 50-plus miles, all the way down to Del Mar, 50-plus miles some of the most beautiful coastline anywhere in the world. But we also know that Mother Nature always wins, and beaches are eroding, bluffs are collapsing, and we've got to deal with that. We've got to do everything we can to try to get sand on the beach, to try to protect our bluffs, to try to protect our rail corridor. We have one of the busiest inter-city passenger rail corridors in the United States that connects San Diego and Los Angeles. I'm proud we've gotten $11 million to protect that rail corridor. We're going to need a lot more. We've gotten $5 million for protection in Oceanside. We've gotten a whole lot more up and down this district. $9.3 million for sand up in San Clemente, $40 million for sand throughout the rest of the district. Oceanside, finally, we're moving with the Army Corps of Engineers in a productive and positive way that hasn't happened in decades. And we've done it because we've established relationships of trust and confidence with the Army Corps of Engineers, and we've prioritized these local concerns over other interests, other things that could be taking our attention. In Encinitas and Solana Beach, the $30 million will mean about 1 million cubic yards of sand. Now, that's going to need to be replenished every 5 years. We're going to need a lot more over time. But the alternative of doing nothing is not acceptable. And it's not just about, you think of tourism, and yes, that's important. We have a coastal economy, 140,000 jobs related to our coastline in San Diego and Orange County, about $7.7 billion in economic activity related to coastal tourism. It's also about safety. And I think we know the story of Dr. Pat Davis, who tragically lost 3 of his family members during a bluff collapse at Grandview Beach. We want to make sure that it doesn't happen again, that we do everything we can to prevent that from happening again. Just the same, we're delivering results when it comes to our water needs. I think we all know that right now we are in a 1,200-year drought. The last 20 years, according to research at UCLA, is the driest in the last 1,200 years, and it's exacerbated by climate change, about 73% worse because of climate change. So we helped get $250 million as part of the bipartisan infrastructure law for water desalination. I'm privileged to have the largest desal plant in the United States up in Carlsbad. There's more that we can do with desalination. Just the same, water recycling. The bipartisan infrastructure law has $1 billion for water recycling. That is the biggest federal investment in water recycling ever. And we're already submitting requests for our district to get some of those funds. We also helped secure $300 million to clean up the pollution in the Tijuana River Valley. And you say, well, you're the representative for North County. Why do you care? Well, we know that what happens at Tijuana River Valley makes its way all the way up here. Researchers at Scripps Institution of Oceanography, they put a non-toxic dye in the water down at the border, and they saw that dye make its way all the way up, past Encinitas, all the way up to Oceanside. And so we know that the water quality issues down there affect us here as well. A really big breakthrough on that just recently, where Mexico, remember the U.S., through the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement, we stepped up and we secured $300 million to deal with this problem. On the Mexican side, they just secured $144 million just a few days ago. We're going to get another $50 million through the Border Water Infrastructure Program. We're fighting very hard to secure that, and that will be $500 million that we'll have, that our government and their government have worked together now to secure. That is huge progress, long overdue. It didn't just happen by accident. We put in a lot of work over the 3.5 years I've been in office to make it happen. We've delivered results, as I said, when it comes to our veterans. Now I see Stuart, but we've got other veterans here. Can they raise their hand? The veterans here, can we give them a round of applause? And Tim and Karen, thank you guys so much for coming. So I'm the grandson of a World War II veteran. And when you get to Congress, you're assigned different committees and you advocate to be on certain committees. My background is in environmental law and policy, so I wanted to be on committees relevant to the environment. And I was assigned to the Natural Resources Committee and assigned to the Select Committee on the Climate Crisis. So I was really honored to get to have those assignments. But I also wanted to be on the Veterans Affairs Committee, and I was assigned to the Veterans Affairs Committee. What I didn't know is that about 3.5 years later, I'd be the vice chair of the committee. I'd chair one of the subcommittees on what's called economic opportunities, so all things related to the GI Bill and workforce development, transition assistance, housing, and homelessness. And I didn't know that I would find it to be some of the most rewarding work I've ever done in my entire life. And the work that we get to do with our veterans day in and day out is truly remarkable. In our PACT Act, which I'll talk about in a minute, we have now passed and gotten signed into law 18 bipartisan veterans bills in 3.5 years. signed into law by President Trump and President Biden. So, the Honoring Our Pact Act. A lot of you know that our post 9/11 veterans who've served in Iraq and Afghanistan, they have been exposed to toxic substances by virtue of their service, burn pits, and we know that they have had significant health consequences as a result. And the unfortunate reality is the VA has not taken care of all these veterans the way that they should have. And there's no question that this is something, it's the very least that we could be doing for the post 9/11 veterans. Some on the other side of the aisle, they ask, well, what about the cost of doing this, the price tag? And one of the VSO, Veteran Service Organization representatives from the Disabled American Veterans, he said, you know what, we were in a hearing, he said, you know what, when we decided to go to war in Iraq and Afghanistan and expose these men and women to burn pits and toxic substances, we already paid. We already decided that we were going to bear that responsibility. And it's the very, very least we can do. So I'm really proud of the fact, notwithstanding that Ted Cruz tried to block it at the last minute, that we got that through on a broad bipartisan vote, and we were standing together, Republicans and Democrats alike, and I was there in the White House to see that signed into law. That is a big deal. That's going to provide 3.5 million veterans with health care, presumed under the Honoring Our Pact Act. So I'm grateful to all the veteran leaders in this room, and I'm looking at folks like Karen Brennan. You know, because of Karen and others, we were able to rename the San Diego VA after Jennifer Moreno. It is the first VA facility that is named after a woman of color, and I think that naming ceremony is going to be coming hopefully soon. Hopefully before Veterans Day. We'll find out. We'll see. We'll see. But I'm very grateful to Karen for all of that. So you should know we're just getting started on all this. Every year we're going out there and we're fighting for this community. Just this morning, I was with our friends in Carlsbad, Matt Hall, and Teresa Costa and Peter Norby. We were out there with a big $5 million check to the city of Carlsbad to invest with streetlights and with traffic circles in one of the most underinvested parts of Carlsbad. We've got great projects going on all up and down our district each year. And I'm always going to fight for those funds. I'm always going to fight for our communities. And I'm going to put that before the partisan bickering, before the fights that you see. If you only watch cable news, I don't care which cable news network, you won't get the full picture of what we're up to. It is true that there are a handful of people on both sides of the aisle. That's all they seem to care about, is how many retweets they get or how many times they can appear on the same cable news channels. Maybe they want to be a cable news star. I always thought if you want to be a star, you should go to Hollywood. If you want to get stuff done, maybe you go serve in Congress. That's why I decided to do it, and I'm very proud of it. So I want to talk about the economy for just a minute, because you've been hearing plenty of news about the economy, and not all that news is accurate. So first of all, the private sector has now recovered all of the jobs lost during the pandemic. Right? Everybody know that? 10 million jobs plus just since this administration started in January of 2021. And it's actually now we've added jobs on top of the ones lost during the pandemic. It has been the fastest and strongest jobs recovery in American history. The fastest and strongest recovery in American history. Would not have been possible without the American Rescue Plan and without the other policies that we put in place when we inherited a broken COVID response from the last administration. I am personally proud of the 20,456 small businesses that received either the PPP, Paycheck Protection Program, the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, the EIDL program in this district. 20,456 small businesses that employ around 240,000 people. I was with one this morning here in Encinitas that would have gone out of business had we not helped, had our office personally not helped this business. And I meet with businesses like that all the time. Also remember this, the American Rescue Plan, the big COVID relief bill, it is how we got so many people vaccinated. I think of the promotores that I met at the Vista Community Clinic, which was one of the first 25 in the country, community clinics that is, to offer the COVID vaccine. A lot of folks in the agriculture community were able to get vaccinated as a result. And I'm really proud of the work that we've done. Now, we have a lot more to do. I am as concerned as anybody in this room about inflation. It is why we passed a bill called the Inflation Reduction Act. And we actually have a plan. Folks on the other side of the aisle, they like to complain. They don't have a plan on inflation. And some of them are friends of mine. And I hear them on television. And they don't have any plans on inflation other than to criticize what we're doing. We are offering serious proposals when it comes to reducing costs. So what do we propose to do? I think you know about, I'll talk about the Inflation Reduction Act, but I think you've heard of it. We also passed legislation on everything from ocean shipping reform to oil company price gouging. And I am really encouraged that the President has released 1 million barrels a day from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. The price of gasoline has now gone down 70 days in a row. 70 days in a row. So that's a good start. We have to bring prices down further, whether groceries or housing or you name it. And we've got real solutions and serious policy where the other side offers critiques without very serious solutions. So the Inflation Reduction Act, what would it do and what would it not do? Well, I think you know that it is about a $740 billion bill. It will reduce the deficit by $300 billion at minimum. In fact, the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget actually came out with an analysis saying that over a decade it would reduce the deficit by $1.9 trillion. $1.9 trillion. Remember that number, okay? And if anybody wants that analysis, we would be happy to send it. It does that largely because it allows Medicare to negotiate prescription drug prices for the first time. That is a huge deal for our seniors. That is a huge deal for our seniors. Now, it doesn't go as far as I'd like. It does cap the price of insulin at $35, but only for Medicare recipients. I would have liked to see all be able to access $35 insulin. So we're going to keep fighting for that. We're going to keep fighting for that. But make no mistake, this is a huge win for our seniors and a huge loss for Big Pharma. For once, the side of seniors has prevailed over Big Pharma. This is a big deal. So what else does it do? Largest investment in climate in the history of the United States, the history of any country, $370 billion. I am deeply proud of that. This bill will reduce greenhouse gas emissions 40% below 2005 levels by 2030. And I joke, that means we got 60% to go. The work is not yet done. But the 40% reduction by 2030 is a great start to get to our goals, to get to where we need to go, to get to where the scientists say we need to be in order to mitigate the worst impacts of the climate crisis. I am very privileged to represent a district that has some of the very best climate scientists in the world. Right down the street, UC San Diego, Scripps Institution of Oceanography. The very least you should expect from your member of Congress is to listen to them, to hear what they're saying, to listen, to accept science on its face, not to give in to big oil companies and the fossil fuel industry. And this has been a long-term labor of love for me, to figure out how we reduce emissions across the board and how we create great jobs in the future while doing it. I was doing it before I was in Congress, and I'm doing it today. And I'm proud of that bill. I'm proud of what we were able to achieve. A lot of discussion around the short-term tax credits and the other things that will incent cleaner ways to drive, cleaner ways to move goods around, cleaner ways to build buildings, to grow food, to generate electricity. A lot has been written and said about that. But I would offer to you that the climate provisions, because I helped some of them, it's really about industrial policy. This is about a shift for the next 20 or 30 or 40 years, because we're all going to be using different technologies when it comes to clean energy, when it comes to transportation, 20, 30, 40 years from now. The question that we have to ask ourselves is, what benefit will the United States see? Will we merely be using technologies that are developed, that are manufactured, that are elsewhere in the world, or will we control our own destiny? Will we control our own destiny? I know that I want those jobs. Somebody has the idea for the next great clean energy company at UCSD. I don't want them to have to go abroad. I want to create those jobs right here at home. Wayne Gretzky, the great hockey player, he always said, skate to where the puck is going to be, not to where the puck is today. I want to position this district to lead on clean tech, just like I want to position this district to continue to lead on semiconductors and microchips. We'll get to that in a second. So, how do we pay for what's in the Inflation Reduction Act? Well, you've heard a lot about this. The biggest way we pay is by making the largest corporations in America finally pay something. Something. Now, let me explain the status quo. It's not pretty. 55 of the biggest companies in the United States, we're talking about companies like Nike and Whirlpool, HP, big companies, pay zero. They pay nothing in corporate taxes. Anybody here own a small business? Do you pay zero? No. Is it fair that Nike and HP pay zero? I don't think it is. I don't think it is. So everybody talks about Amazon. Amazon actually paid a little bit. They had record profit in 2021, and they paid 6%. 6%. Not enough. So this bill, all it says is you've got to pay, if you have a book income of $1 billion or more in the prior year, you got to pay 15%. Fair? Right? So that's how we pay for most of what's in this bill. That's how we pay for most of what's in this bill. There's a 1% excise tax on stock buybacks because these companies are doing far too much of that. And then the real controversial thing has been that we actually bring $204 billion in revenue by finally getting the IRS the resources they should have had all along. You have no idea in our office how many people, how many constituents complain about the time it takes to get any answers from the IRS, to get their refunds processed. This bill isn't about IRS agents going door to door and trying to audit the middle class. Give me a break. Have they read the bill? No, they hadn't read the bill. They barely read the one-pager on the bill. Any objective analysis will tell you exactly what that money is for. It's for making up for decades of underinvestment in the IRS. And they're going to go after very wealthy people who've cheated on their taxes for far too long. And that's what should happen, don't you think? Each of us in this room should pay our taxes that we owe, not a penny more. And that's all this bill says. And that's all that the IRS would be empowered to do. Now, there is a quote from a Republican appointed by President Trump as the IRS commissioner. Here's his quote, okay? Again, this is a Republican appointed by Trump. I quote, "This bill is absolutely not about increasing audit scrutiny on small businesses or middle-income Americans." I'll read it again. "This bill is absolutely not about increasing audit scrutiny on small businesses or middle-income Americans." Those are the facts. That is the truth. For my friends across the aisle or anybody else, just read the bill. Just read a summary. Just read anything other than, the stuff that's feeding your head. So, look, to sum this up, this bill is going to improve the lives of millions of Americans. It's going to lower costs. We're going to do all we can to reduce costs on health care as well. This will extend for 3 more years the reduced costs that were put in place by the American Rescue Plan. It's going to fight climate change. It's going to reduce the deficit. And I said by $1.9 trillion, that's the exact same amount that the Republicans, the last time they had the gavels, increased the deficit with the 2017 tax cuts bill, where 83% of the benefit went to the top 1%. We all got the shaft in California when the state and local tax deduction was capped at $10,000. Y'all remember that? So they increased the deficit by $1.9 trillion. We decreased the deficit by $1.9 trillion. Another example of Democrats cleaning up the mess that they're left by the prior administration. So let me talk for just a minute about the CHIPS and Science Act. $260 billion investment. Why is this important? 90% of the advanced microchips that we get today, that we use in everything from our cars to our computers, our microwaves, and yes, our defense systems, 90% of the advanced ones come from Taiwan. Anybody think it's a good idea for us not to invest in our domestic supply of microchips and semiconductors? So that's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to do. It's a national security concern. Now, let me just finally say this. You have a decision to make, what kind of country you want in the years ahead. You have a decision to make on Social Security and Medicare. Do you want us to make sure we have a solvent Social Security and Medicare system, or do you see every 5 years for them to... We know that that's what many of them they're going to do if they have the chance. Do you want them to repeat the affordable care? It would be building and expanding on quality and affordable care for everybody. And if that wasn't enough, we've got to take these attacks on federal law enforcement seriously as well. There's no place in our society to be attacking the FBI. FBI agents that are simply doing their jobs now receiving threats, violent attacks like what we saw recently in Ohio as a result of dangerous rhetoric. So, that they'll stop that. There's something greater at stake this election. This is different than any election in my lifetime. Do we want an elected official who's going to stand up for democracy and the rule of law, or one who's merely going to stand up for one person who was defeated in the last election? Reduce the debt, as we're talking about, or do we want to increase the national debt? The prior administration Now, Trump was writing, he said he would eliminate the debt in 8 years. You can look it up. He said he would eliminate the entire national debt in 8 years. They racked up $7.8 trillion in 4 years. Some of it pandemic related, a lot of it not pandemic related. Do we want to transition to renewable energy, or do we double down on the dirty energy policies of the past? On privatization, which is what those on the other side of the aisle, many of them, want to do. Do we actually want to address the gun violence epidemic in this country? Or we passed the first gun violence prevention bill in the Congress in 30-plus years, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. Or do we want to go back to the days where we're completely beholden to the National Rifle Association and the corporate gun lobby and block any progress? Do we want to stand up for reproductive rights? Or do we want to support the Supreme Court's extreme decision over the Supreme Court overturned Roe? I was on the floor of the House and I watched as people on the other side of the aisle celebrated. They cheered. They cheered. And I saw as our opponent tweeted in celebration. It's not what you need. If given the chance, the other party's going to enact a nationwide abortion ban. It's like Maya Angelou said famously, when somebody tells you who they are, believe them the first time. Believe them the first time. So, those are the choices we face in this election. I'm here to answer your questions. I've gone on for too long, but I hope you like what you've heard. I hope you know we're working every single day for this community, rolling up our sleeves, trying to get things done. If you want a member of Congress who's going to scream the loudest on cable news or say the most incendiary things, I'm not your guy. I'm not your candidate. But if you want somebody who's actually going to get the job done and fight hard for this community each and every day and wake up thinking about the people who haven't been represented well in the past, I hope you give me another 2 years. So with that, I'll take your questions. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for having me.
So the way that, hello?
Now try.
Can you hear me now? Oh, you can. The way this is going to work is I picked Elsie from the audience. I've never met her before. I actually learned she was a veteran when she raised her hand. She's going to draw the raffle ticket, so this is completely unbiased.
Yeah,
Yikes.
it's really loud.
It is loud. Ellen is going to be holding the mic. Here's what you have to know. You get to touch it. You do not get to hold it. When she's holding it, she's not going to let you grab it. And you'll pull her over if you do. But if you can please come around the backside, line up here. She's going to call 3 numbers initially, and then 1 in between each question. And that's really loud.
Yeah.
She'll call 3 numbers initially, then 1 in between each question. And let's go.
Okay. Sorry, I'm using the mask here to try to protect. I have 2 microphones, one for the folks out on Facebook. So thank you for pulling these. So come on over here, and when you come up and you ask your question, remember I'm holding the mic, give the congressman your name and your city, okay? So let's start with 120, 130, and 118. Come on up. Okay, there should be 2 more of you. Come on up.
Don't be shy.
Yeah. Okay.
Hello, Mr. Congressman. I'm Brecken. I'm from Carlsbad. So my question isn't related to 2022, more so 2024. A lot of left-leaning voters oppose President Biden running again for numerous reasons. Do you have any thoughts on this issue?
Sure. Well, I think let's get through 2022 first. So let me go back here. What was your name again?
My name is Brecken.
Brecken. I think the first thing we need to do is get through 2022. Thank you, Brecken. Appreciate it. Yep. Obviously, that's my focus. We got 77 days to go, and that ultimately will mean a lot about the second 2 years of the first term of the Biden administration. Now, I think the president has done a whole lot working with Congress in the last 2 years. I'm proud of our record. When you look at just the last week, I mentioned the Inflation Reduction Act, bipartisan Science Act, honoring our PACT Act, but also the bipartisan infrastructure law, the American Rescue Plan. There's a lot in there that's good for our families, good for our community, and I'm proud to work with this administration. I can tell you that I'm also proud of the decency and the integrity with which this administration has conducted itself. I understand there are those that don't agree with every policy the administration has made, but I don't have to go to bed at night worried that this president will be so reckless as the last to get us in some terrible situation by some errant tweet. I used to not sleep well at night thinking about the last president's behavior, and I don't sleep poorly anymore, at least not because of Joe Biden. So, thank you for the question.
And thank you also for keeping your question brief. Just as a reminder, you have a minute to ask your question and then 3 minutes for the congressman to answer. We have a timekeeper up here. So the less you talk, the more he can answer your question. So let's make it 129 and 127. Come on up.
There we go. What happened to 118 or the other two?
I don't know, we lost
120 and 130. Check your tickets.
Yeah, you may be a winner.
Oh.
Okay.
And I'm from Encinitas. I left to go to college. I came back. I got a...
Don't be nervous.
And truthfully, me and my husband are probably going to have to leave the state. I don't think we're going to ever... You are planning to do to address this?
Yes, and your name again was Charlotte?
Yeah.
Very nice to meet you. I hope you don't leave. I hope you don't leave. Obviously, it's a phenomenal community we all live in. I'm as concerned about it as you are. Right now, the median housing price in our district's hovering right around $1 million. And the average rent, I saw one-bedroom rental in Carlsbad right now is right around $3,000, about the same as it is in many big cities, $3,000. Think about that. I worry about the other costs too, child care, health care, gas, groceries, all the rest. So, and obviously, we have one big budget every month, and we have an income or two incomes every month. And you got to make ends meet. So what have we specifically been doing on housing? I'll talk generally about housing and specifically about veterans housing. Generally on housing, the biggest initiative that I've seen in my time in the Congress, which I wholeheartedly supported, was the $100 billion investment for affordable housing as part of the Build Back Better legislation. That was the larger reconciliation bill that ultimately was shrunk and became what is now known as the Inflation Reduction Act. That was a huge investment. That was a necessary investment we have to continue to advocate for because we lack affordable housing stock, and the federal government can play a role when it comes to housing. It won't work in every community the same way. Obviously, local control over how, where, and when these projects are implemented. I know in Encinitas there will be. I know there will be. But we've got to do it. We've got to do it because we can't price people out altogether. Second, when it comes to teachers and first responders and others, I have tried to work with my team on policies that will help them to incentivize our teachers, our nurses, law enforcement, firefighters, and the rest, looking at ways we can incentivize here. Maybe it's a program that first time, but I'm open to any idea that we can have that lines in our community stay here. Because I think we're better off as a community. Our teachers, our firefighters, our law enforcement, when they can actually afford to live in the communities that they serve. I think that would help a lot. When it comes to veterans housing, so I chair the subcommittee on veterans housing. I've been fighting very, very hard, and will continue to, and the fight will go on for a long time, to try to get the money that is available. Thank you, Rachel. Here, that's get the hook if you didn't see that. So there are tons of dollars in the HUD-VASH program, Housing and Urban Development Supportive Housing Program, that need to get to San Diego County, that need to get to Orange County. And I'm doing all I can to get that underutilized resource here. And we're working very closely with Nathan Fletcher and others on that. So that job continues. But I totally agree with you, and we could talk about the other child care. I just had a roundtable this morning with Tara Lawson-Reamer, your great supervisor, about the cost of child care. Right now, the average cost, this is the last thing I'll say, I promise. The average cost of child care in California is about $17,000 per child. That is more than the cost of attending a four-year public university in California. And that is fundamentally broken. So we had in the Build Back Better legislation two things. One, the expanded child tax credit that actually put money in people's pockets with children, $300 and $250 a month depending on the age of your child. and that would dramatically help. And in addition to that, we had a child care policy where if you make than 250% of the median income, your child care expenses no more. We need to bring those policies back. The Inflation Reduction Act got a lot of good things done, pieces related to child care, and we need that because on top of everything else, it helps with labor force participation as well. We want to get people back to work. Thank you for the question.
Before you go, 116 and 123, please.
Hi, my name's Bill. From West Virginia.
Hi, Bill.
I have a question about campaign finance reform. It seems like we used to worry about lobbyists, now that those guys are just buying the politicians, it seems like. So what is Congress doing about that? What are the Democrats doing about it?
Great question. Great question. So I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is there is a group of us in Congress who are committed, not taking a cent of PAC money, committed to banning stock trading for members of Congress. In fact, I'm a co-sponsor on a bill that would ban corporate PACs altogether, their very existence. That's the good news. The bad news is there's only like 40 of us or 50 of us, and there's 435 members. So that is why it was such a huge deal when the average American beat Big Pharma with this bill. That is why it was such a huge deal when the average American beat Big Oil with this bill. It is not impossible, it is just very difficult. But the reality is that there's far too much influence from Big Oil, Big Pharma, the big corporate gun manufacturers, gun lobby as well. So what do we need to do? Well, we had it in a bill called the For the People Act that would have fundamentally made a fairer campaign finance system. I would like to believe that there are far more members of Congress, if given the opportunity. You know, I tell them, you could see the light. You know, we do very well with grassroots contributions. I'm really proud of the fact that since we started our campaign, we've had around 300,000 people. Think of that. 300,000 people that have contributed to our campaign, right around $50 on average. That's huge. That's huge. There's tremendous power when you have a grassroots campaign, as opposed to when you rely only on big corporate donors. So we're not going to change it overnight. The other, I'll give you another example of reform that I've advocated when it comes to campaign finance. You ever get those emails, or you hear about these emails, that have the boxes pre-checked for the recurring contribution? So I have a bill called the Uncheck the Box Act, which would force that if you're going to ask for money, that you have to make sure that box is not pre-checked. Now, it was Trump that, you know, was the most notorious and still is doing this, but many others as well. What I ran into, just Republicans, there were a lot of people on our side of the aisle say, wait a minute, what are you doing? You want to reform this system? We benefit from this system. And that's a challenge, but I won't stop fighting. We've got the End Corruption Caucus, and I'm a proud member of that, and we're just going to keep at it one day at a time. Thank you for the question, Bill.
122.
Hi. Great. Wonderful. Beautiful.
Well, we have a dilemma here. The Canadian Housing Finance Board is certified as the reserve process for over 10 years. Due to one's circumstances, financial, whatever, we're always put down. It's always further down the road. And in addition, we've gotten a fence put up on the road, understandable, but people are cutting the fence now because we need to cross. We need to connect the two communities on either side. Transportation Secretary Buttigieg, Buttigieg.
You're close.
How do you?
Buttigieg.
Buttigieg, okay.
Edge. Yes.
He states that transportation should always connect, never divide.
Yeah.
We have this big issue, and my two questions are, is there any way you can help the city of Encinitas get proper funding and move forward on this sooner than later? Do we have to wait until we finish another project before we can start this? And the second question I have is, can you help us find alternative sources, either private or governmental, to get the funding together so we can start this process soon? Because we're at a standstill right now. It's not healthy for anybody here.
Well, So, first of all, I'm a huge fan of Pete Buttigieg. We're friends. I recently saw him and spoke with him, and I'm hopeful that he will come visit our district soon. I think he's doing a great job as Secretary of Transportation. I will tell you that the way our office works is we solicit feedback from our city leaders. I'm very fortunate to have 10 cities in our district, right? So Laguna, it will be Laguna Niguel, but Dana Point, San Juan Capistrano, San Clemente. We've got Camp Pendleton, Oceanside, Carlsbad Vista, Encinitas, Solana Beach, Del Mar. And each of those cities, in addition to Sandag and Orange County Transit Authority, they all have their priority projects. And so what I would encourage you to do is keep at it with these two folks here and others, but they're pretty accessible. I mean, come on, they're pretty accessible. But keep at it, because what our office does is we ask them all the time and their staff, what are your top priorities? And then we try to align those priorities with the available sources of funding. There are two main available sources of funding right now. One is the annual congressional appropriations process. That's where lots of our wins have come. And that's as a result of the direct feedback with the city of Encinitas and all the other cities in our district. And it's completely transparent and open and accountable, and I'm really proud of the fact that this coming fiscal year we've got over $50 million of investments in our community, 15 different projects, all 15 requests to be submitted were accepted, and they're moving forward. I'm really, really proud of that. Now, that's one pot of money. The other is the bipartisan infrastructure law. For example, we were able to get $1 million for Encinitas and Solana Beach for 1 million cubic yards of sand through the bipartisan infrastructure law. And there are tons of different programs within the bipartisan infrastructure law that either are in existence or will be in existence that might be able to help. I've had a number of conversations about whether it's the safety of our tracks, the trenching of our tracks, enough sand on the beach, the health and safety of our rail corridor, again, is so extraordinarily important. And we're going to do everything we can to deliver every cent that we can, working with the relationships that we've got up and down the district. And the rail corridor in particular is of great interest because of the economic impact it has. So we think about it as a very busy rail corridor, which it is. It's the second busiest intercity rail corridor in the U.S. But perhaps more important, $1 billion a year in economic activity for our region. So every time it shuts down, thank you, Rachel, every time it shuts down, it's tens of millions of dollars. If it shuts down a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you do the math. And it's only as strong as its weakest link, which is why we have to help in Del Mar with the bluffs and why we have to help in San Clemente with the sand. I was just there yesterday, and it's a problem. It's a big problem, but it's a problem we can fix. But I always remember, Mother Nature always wins, and we have to prepare for the future, and we need a stable rail corridor, and we need a safe rail corridor. I thank you for the question. Rachel's going to get the hook if I go on any longer. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to have to take a little technical break here and switch out some microphones
Okay.
because they're having a hard time hearing me on Facebook.
You got it. Sorry,
well,
Facebook.
While they're doing that,
Oh, you
one
just put it up there.
131 and 132, come on up.
Thank you. By the way, watch us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, probably other things I don't even know, if you can't make it in person. Thank you.
Are you going to bring me another mic, or am I just doing it like this? I'm fine? Okay, good enough.
Hi, I'm Kathy from Oceanside.
Hi.
I have two daughters. One's a teacher in the Chicago area and one's a teacher in Colorado. And every time there's one of these shootings, my anxiety level goes up. I'm heartbroken, and I know that there's shootings every day, everywhere. Crime level has gone up, but these get so much attention. And it makes me wonder why we still permit these weapons of war. Is there anything on the horizon that might do another assault weapons ban?
Yeah, thank you. So I have good news. For the first time in a long time in the House of Representatives, we just passed the assault weapons ban again. And then it went to the Senate, and unfortunately you need 60 votes in the Senate, or you need to amend the filibuster rule, which senators there will not do. But it was a big deal that the assault weapons ban passed in the House. That was not a foregone conclusion. Not a foregone conclusion. So what do we need to do moving forward? I mentioned the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. It's a good bill. It's a good bill. Has more restrictions if you're between 18 and 21 in the way you can purchase a firearm. It provides, bless you, provides lots of funding for mental health, for school safety. However, until you address the issue of getting the weapons of war off our streets and out of our communities, you are not going to address the big problem. And the big problem is the unfortunate proliferation of these AR-15s and the other weapons of war. In addition to that, we need universal background checks. We've been saying this for years. We're not going to stop. We're not going to stop. I'm a proud member of the Gun Violence Prevention Caucus. I wish it were more of a bipartisan caucus. As of right now, it is not. As of right now, it is not. And that is a sad thing. And that is because of the influence of the corporate gun lobby, and that is because of the influence of the NRA and other interests who make it virtually impossible for a Republican candidate to advance out of a primary if they say or do anything that isn't in perfect accordance. If they don't have that perfect A rating with the NRA, then they're going to get booted in a primary by somebody who is more pro-NRA. And that's sad. I have an F with the NRA. It's the only F I've ever gotten. I'm proud of it. And it's their money as well. If you take a look at what they give both directly and indirectly with dark money, it's quite remarkable what they give. And then you wonder how you get the outcomes that you get. By the way, you brought up campaign finance reform. You can track back when the climate issue became such a partisan issue. And it's when Citizens United was decided. That's when all of a sudden the oil companies and the Koch brothers and all the rest decided they could just put billions of dollars into the campaign system and really muck things up. And that's what they did for about 12 years. You know, the Kochs and others, I mean, they really did a number on a number of Waxman-Markey, a number of other important climate bills. And they thought they were going to win with this last one. But they underestimated, I think, the influence of the average person who sees that the climate crisis is real and that we've got to take action now. And so that's what we're doing, and I'm very proud of it.
Also 121 and 124, please.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Erin. I live here in Cardiff. I really appreciate you being here tonight, and I'm grateful that you are a representative. I'm particularly heartened to hear when you talk about your efforts that are of a bipartisan nature and collaborative. My question has to do with my very top concern, which is polarization. And I'm curious if you are involved with or a supporter of the Building Civic Bridges Act. And if so, if you think it has a good chance, and if you have any suggestions for maybe the best way to allocate those funds that they would have.
I have to look at if it's the bill that I'm thinking of. I know there's a bill that Sandra Day O'Connor's foundation has been very active in that would promote education around civics for younger people. I was astonished, and yes, I support that. If it's the one that I'm thinking of, I'd have to double check on the name. But I was astonished when I heard that the average high school student in America can name more brands of denim jeans than they can name presidents. Think about that. They can name, the average high school student in America can name more brands of jeans than they can name presidents. That's a sad state of affairs, and I think that that erosion of basic understanding of civics has led to the acceptance of polarized discourse. And if younger people aren't taking the time to understand their history and our institutions, they're not going to be there to protect our institutions the same way. So I worry a lot about polarization. I'm reading a great book by Ezra Klein called Why We're Polarized. One of his key arguments is that there's this feedback loop where the press, they want eyeballs, right? They want clicks, they want viewers, and they think that the more polarized they are, the higher ratings they get. And unfortunately, they may be correct about that. And that creates that feedback loop because the viewers then see all that polarized information, and then they want more of it. And hence, the media provides more of it. The politicians see all of this, and they say, wow, the voters are polarized, the networks are polarized, or the cable news is polarized, social media, don't even get me started on that. Then we need to be polarized too. And so it creates this vicious cycle, this feedback loop. And making it worse is the fact that, again, you've got a handful of people on both sides of the aisle who care more about how many cable news hits they get and how many social media followers they get and retweets they get and who can say the most controversial and incendiary thing, as opposed to what they actually got done. And unfortunately, those are the ones that get the coverage. I wish it weren't that way. The only way that I know to combat that is by doing my job to the best of my ability every single day, by rolling up my sleeves and trying to meet as many people as I can in many different ways as I can to communicate that it's not as screwed up as you think. A lot of us are just trying to do our jobs. I hope you'll help me as my ambassadors, since you're here today, communicate that message in the next 77 days. Thank you.
Hi, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you.
I'm Mary Natava. I live here in Cardiff, and I have a business recycling food waste, food stuff in Oceanside.
Wonderful. All right.
I've been doing that for 27 years. We've reached 2 million tons.
Wow.
One of the questions that I have, and is that I'm also a farmer. I have an avocado and coffee farm up in Oceanside.
Cool.
And we're really concerned about water, and even though the County Water Authority has worked really, really hard to secure the rights of water for San Diego County, if the Colorado River gets much drier,
Yeah.
then we're in a lot of trouble. And I look at other countries, and my background is in soil chemistry, so I really like the whole chemistry thing and environmental sciences. So it's really important to me for us to be thinking about using technology at this point to make sure that we can keep food local. And I don't think we can do that without looking at a lot of desalination projects as well as recycled water projects. So
Yeah.
what can we do?
I agree.
Here in San Diego County. I mean, it really is desperate.
Well, this is a problem. Thank you so much for your work and for that question. This is a problem around the world. I don't know if anybody had a chance to see the PBS NewsHour last night, but they did a whole piece on all the different rivers in Europe. And there was a gentleman walking in the River Thames in England, and it was dry in places that had always been flowing. And what we see here, obviously, Lake Powell and Lake Mead are at very low levels. We see the whole fight around the Colorado River, which, you know, in hindsight, the way that we decided to build a gigantic metropolis of 10, 15 million people in the middle of an area that probably didn't have the water to support a tenth of that, probably wasn't the greatest move. But here we are. We're a reluctant metropolis. So what do we do now? The good news is San Diego County and Orange County, they have led the way on desalination and water recycling. And I know that we can do a lot more. I know that we can do a lot more because I've seen other countries that have done a lot more. I was recently in Israel. 26% of the water in Israel comes from desalination. They recycle, I believe, 76, 78% of their water. We can do a lot more. And I know that with the bipartisan infrastructure law, as I mentioned, so I had a bill called the Desalination Development Act. It was $260 million for environmentally responsible desalination. In the bipartisan infrastructure law, we got $250 million for water desalination. Not bad. $10 million haircuts, you know, not nice, but it's not terrible. And there was also a record, as I said before, of $1 billion in federal investment in water recycling projects. The first one that we were able to help in our district was the Pure Water Oceanside project. I would love to be able to see Encinitas, Solana Beach, Del Mar, all the rest. There's one up in Dana Point that they're working on called the Doheny Desalination Project. There is a water recycling project, Del Obispo Water Recycling Project, that we just got a fiscal year 23 appropriation for. I'm hopeful there'll be some here as well. We want to work with you on all of them because we need all of them. And the reality is that this is coming. Whether we want to or not admit it, it is coming. The other piece of it that's, you know, the most important is conservation. Use less, right? Insanity is doing the same thing again and again and expecting a different result. So when it comes to our water consumption, we've got to be mindful of the future, and we've got to be mindful of our role and do the best we can, right? And it's never too late to start. Now, I'm very happy about the fact that we're doing much better here than in most places. But thank you for your great work. And food waste is a whole nother thing we could talk about. Next question, we'll do that. Okay, all right.
Okay, number 114, please.
Hi, I'm Brian from Encinitas. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
You mentioned 2017 tax changes,
Yeah.
and specific to salt that probably negatively impacted a significant portion of your constituency. Where do you stand on potential reforms to salt, and what, if any, efforts are underway? It seemed like in 2021 there was a little movement on that front, but I haven't heard anything.
Well, so thank you for the question. It's Brian, right?
Brian, yes.
We actually passed it, the salt repeal of the salt cap in the Build Back Better Act back in December of last year. And unfortunately, our friend, who I won't name, from West Virginia, West Virginia is a state that is a taker state as opposed to a giver state. But we passed it, and it wasn't easy. And we got it done in that bill, and it was a increase in the cap from $10,000 to $80,000 for 9 years. That would go a long way. Now, in our district, before the cap was put in place, in the last available year of data that we've got, because I hear a lot, oh, this is only for rich people, right? The salt cap is just for rich people. So in this district, I asked, how many people who made how many people made $100,000 or less in that taxable year take the salt cap, and what was our average deduction in the district in that year? 86,000 people in this district took that deduction in 2017. And the average deduction in this district was $24,900. When I go and I talk to people, whether in forums like this or at house parties or I go visit people, I don't hear from very, very, very wealthy people about this. I hear from nurses, I hear from teachers, I hear from school counselors, I hear from firefighters. That's who I hear from. That's who was hurt, right? And so if you own a home in this district, and we talked about Charlotte, right? We talked about the cost of living in this district. 62% of the people in this district own a home. We know that the average price of a house is right around $1 million. If you pay property taxes, even of 1%, most people pay 1.5%, maybe more, depending on where you live and all the rest. There's your cap right there. You were just capped. And now your tax bill's higher. So we fought first, even before Build Back Better, with a standalone piece of legislation that we passed to repeal it altogether. And most of the time in Congress, you get an ideological divide. Republicans, Democrats, conservatives, etc. Wasn't the case with salt. We had a geographic divide. California, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts all supported repealing the cap. And some of the states in the Midwest and the South said, no, keep the cap. What was interesting is we got our friends on our side of the aisle from states like Florida, states like Texas, to come our way. And we passed it. And then we passed it a second time in Build Back Better. I'm not going to stop until this is fixed. We had the opportunity to fix it, and unfortunately, the senator from West Virginia didn't want to do it. It was incredibly frustrating, but we're just going to keep at it. Thank you for the question.
Numbers 115 and 128, please.
Hi, my name is Amy Bennett from Arcadia, and I just want to thank you so much for all your support of the climate-related legislation that has been going on. Thank you for your support of the Inflation Reduction Act, but even more importantly, the great news of bipartisan chips and science. That's huge that it's bipartisan. I echo what other people have said about polarization, and chips was bipartisan. So my question is, we still have a ways to go. You know, this act got us a long way, but we have a ways to go, and I'm looking forward to the new Congress. Where do you see opportunities to work across the aisle to get us the rest of the way on climate?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's one I think about all the time. Obviously, a lot is going to have to do with who has the gavels. Because let me tell you something that is just the truth. It's unfortunate, but it's the truth. If Republicans take control of the House and Kevin McCarthy becomes the Speaker of the House and has the opportunity to create and to eliminate select committees, I would expect him to dissolve our select committee on climate, to just eliminate it altogether. And that's not good, because that committee was the group that created the foundation that became the climate part of the Inflation Reduction Act, working with our friends in Ways and Means and Appropriations and the other committees of jurisdiction, Energy and Commerce, to get it done. But you disband that select committee, I think that really puts us in an unfortunate position. Because what we would continue to do is figure how to build on the progress we made, right? 40% reduction by 2030. We need to get a long way further in order to have the reductions in emission commensurate with what science says we need to do. We need to get to at least 50%. Now, the good news is that we can also do a lot at the state level, we can do a lot at the local level, and the administration can do a lot with executive action. But as soon as you get a new administration that isn't committed to reducing emissions, well, then we're back to square one. So this is something I think about, and there's no greater solution that I have right now today than the political solution of what happens in 77 days. If we are somehow, some way able to elect 2 more Democratic senators and grow that majority and see a future where we could have bold climate action, think about all the different things that we could do to further reduce emissions, it's going to take 52 Democratic senators to be able to do that. Just the same, and I wish that weren't the case. I wish there were Republican senators that would go our way. But so long as big oil has the influence that it does, it's going to be tough to envision that future. Just the same in the House. I think the political obituary of the House Democrats has been written far too prematurely. I think the media has been far too quick to write off House Democrats. And you re-elect House Democrats, you keep the gavels in our hands. You keep that select committee moving forward in a productive direction. And then we can get big things done. And then we can continue to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Regardless of what happens with the election, I am committed to fighting every day to make sure that as many of those resources in those bills make their way here. That we do everything we can to dramatically reduce emissions from the cars we drive, the buildings we build, the way we grow food, all of our farmers in sustainable and regenerative agriculture, the way we generate electricity. I want to be a leader here. I not only want to use those technologies here, I not only want to build large-scale technologies here, I want to make sure we're inventing the next generation here. So we're going to do everything we can in that regard. Thanks for the question.
Okay, 119 and 125.
Hi, Mike. Stuart Donaldson from Encinitas.
Hi, Stuart.
I have a question with respect to the IRA. I know you voted for it. I know there's some very important benefits for our district as well as nationwide. But if you had the ability to write one more amendment into that bill, what would it be?
I've thought about that. So I had a bill, the American Coast and Ocean Protection Act, that would ban offshore drilling off the coast of Southern California. And you say, well, wait, don't we need more oil production? Well, we definitely don't need more oil production off the Southern California coast, because what we get off the Southern California coast is a drop in the bucket. It's about 1/3 of one day of what we actually use comes from the Southern California coast. But the risk is huge. We saw what happened with the oil spill last year all the way up in Huntington Beach, but tar balls made their way all the way down here. So I wrote a bill to ban offshore drilling off the coast of Southern California, and we fought like crazy, and we got it in the House Build Back Better Act last year. But the senator from West Virginia didn't like it so much. So that would be the one provision I would have liked to see. And guess what? We get 2 more Democratic senators, we keep those gavels, it'll get done. It'll get done. Thank you. There are a lot of others too, but Rachel's going to break the card out on me any minute. Okay.
117 and 126.
Hi, my name is Dave Callender. I work part-time at a bike shop. I wondered if, I'm not sure, probably it's more of a request than a question, but as someone who works at a bike shop, I'm very excited about everybody, all the kids that are riding bikes. But on the other hand, electric bikes, but on the other hand, there's a lot of safety issues. And I think that part of that, as someone who works at a bike shop, I'll back up just for a second, is that I was also disappointed there were no tax credits around e-bikes.
Me too.
But I think that the real thing around that is about safety of the bikes.
Yep.
And the safety of the people. And the safety of the bikes, as someone who works on these e-bikes, there's a lot of safety issues with a lot of the e-bikes that are out there. The brakes don't work. There's a lot of issues. These are heavy things. And then the other is in terms of teaching kids about safe riding. And I think that's part of layering back into the tax credit. If there could be a way of doing tax credits on bikes, which is about training and families participating in it. If parents were participating big things overall, from a federal standpoint, just like cars, bikes need to be, made to be safer, because a lot of those e-bikes you see out there are not.
I agree. It's Dave, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. So I have a 10-year-old and 8-year-old. They are not ready for e-bikes just yet, but I'm sure they'll get them at some point. And when they do, of course, we all want them to be safe. Let me tell you, there was a tax credit for e-bikes. It didn't make it into the Inflation Reduction Act. I was disappointed to see that. We did have tax credits, of course, for vehicles and even for used EVs, and we could get in the weeds of any of that if you like. But what I would say is I completely agree with you on the safety issue, because I see it where I live and all up and down this district. In fact, earlier today, the city of Carlsbad declared a city emergency over this, saying that e-bikes were not safe enough, and just bringing this to public attention. What I would say is that also today we had $5 million, the announcement of $5 million for traffic circles and safety improvements in Carlsbad. So not the only answer, but one of the things that you can do is you can put in safety measures. You can put in things like traffic circles that help slow traffic down a bit in those areas that are densely populated and residential neighborhoods and the rest. Parts of our district, actually Encinitas has a lot more bike lanes than most of our district. Parts of our district, I won't name who the cities are because we're trying to help them, don't have any. So this is another one of those things, those safety improvements that we can get funded with the annual appropriations process. It's up to each of your cities, and if there are specific parts of the city, advocate with your city leadership, or tell us and we can advocate with your city leadership. Yep. 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 Fair enough. I'd love to, have a follow-up with you about that, and I appreciate your expertise. Appreciate your expertise. Thank you.
The ones that I've seen, they have a little turn-off just before you hit the circle.
Yeah.
That you could go off the road and then maybe go across and then come back onto the road, but they're really difficult to work with and miss them.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Okay, we'll follow up. Appreciate it. Stuart, how are you?
I'm doing good, Congressman.
Thank you. Now, I haven't met virtually anybody that asked a question, but Stuart I know. So I'm just being upfront.
And thank you, elected officials, and thank you, Democratic endorsed candidates. Couple of things, I ran across a note that you collected with Democratic senators in the area, the Congress members, about the Tijuana pollution thing.
Yes.
And I have an idea about where to put that nuclear waste, West Virginia.
No.
No. All right, fair enough. I try to bring a solution, Congressman. I really try. Anyhow, thank you for writing that letter. It was eloquent, and I take it again. There were no pictures. The letters were too small. That was the problem. I did write a letter to the senator today.
Thank you.
Anyhow, the VHIE, Veterans Health Information Exchange.
Yeah.
Yeah. I use community care all the time, and I have a couple of things pending. And from my practical experience says that there's either a training issue among physicians and staff, or it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I pledged you I'm going to find out which one it is and report to that. I often get a lot, I'm on the press release thing, and I often, for a hobby, kind of want to dig deep on what the press release says versus the practicality.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure you know that we've made a big deal about online appointments for veterans.
Yep.
Okay, great. I went through the first two on the list for our region. Guess what?
What's that?
Not available.
Not available.
Not available. I'll do the whole list, but I just kind of sort of trim. And I read that rule, and it's up to each region to enforce it.
Yeah.
I think we should revisit that.
So I'd love to have a follow-up with our official side and you on VHIE specifically so we can dig into that and get answers from VA. I'm very honored that we've got a great working relationship with VA. We did in the last administration too, and certainly in this administration with Secretary McDonough, who came and visited us a few months ago. Yes, sir. You were there that day. Absolutely. What I would say is that the VA, like any large institution that has been around for a long time, that has computer software that is dated, they constantly need to improve and streamline and modernize the information technology infrastructure that they've got. The good news, and I have personally gone and visited, so I'll give you just one example. And Stuart, you maybe know this, you maybe don't. So we have all these different veterans over the first 2 years complain about basic stuff they need changed for the GI Bill. They change an address. They can't, up or down, they can't figure out why it takes so long to get somebody to call them back or to make the changes necessary for their GI Bill benefits. And so I wanted to get to the bottom of it. And I found out that all of the GI Bill benefits processing happens at one call center in Muskogee, Oklahoma. So I went to Muskogee, Oklahoma. It's a grocery store that was converted into a giant VA call center. And I go there, and look, the men and women who work there are awesome. I think they have about 1,300 people that work there, and it's amazing that they were able to get anything done at all. Because what I saw is that the computer systems don't talk to one another. They had some that were fairly modern. They used Windows, that used, post, Windows 95 even. Great, right? But then they had other pieces of the infrastructure that used COBOL. Remember COBOL? Right, they were still using COBOL. So I asked then Dr. Lawrence, who was the person in charge when the last administration was there, and he said, well, we need about $130 million. And guess what? Through the American Rescue Plan, we got them the money. We got them the money between the CARES Act and the American Rescue Plan. And we sent the money where it needed to go, and they're working on it, and it's better. It's better. Now, we had a hearing on it recently. You go back and you can see this. If you're really bored, you can watch on C-SPAN. And I asked the new person who's there, have you fixed COBOL? And they told me they were a COBOL programmer, so I felt badly. But yes, they had fixed, and there's no more COBOL. Now, I bring that example up because there are countless other systems in the VA where they have those legacy issues, and we just have to fix them. Some people on the other side of the aisle just want to privatize the whole thing. We don't want to do that. We want to provide our veterans with the very best care of anywhere in the world, and that's why I'm so proud to work with them. I'm so proud that we've got some of the best VA facilities in the entire country here, including the VA in San Diego and the Red, White, and Blue Clinic in Oceanside. And I am thrilled with the progress that we're making. Now, the work never ends for our veterans, but that doesn't mean you just privatize the whole thing. And that's what some other people want to do. Thank you, Stuart.
And Congressman, we have one more question left, and after her, we got to every single question.
Amazing. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
So, this is the last question. I'm just going to give you a little bit of information because I know you're going to probably run out of here, leave and grab dinner as soon as this is over. But there is a comment card on your chairs, and you could please fill those out because I actually do read all of them, and we can't make these better without your recommendations and suggestions. So if you could drop those off at the back, there will be some people in boxes. Gather them on your way out. That would be fantastic. And thank you again for joining us on a Tuesday evening, and at that, I'm going to let Ellen hold the mic for the last question.
Hi, nice to see you again, Melissa.
Yeah.
So I'm in San Diego, so not technically one of your constituents, but I do work for Oceana, and I don't have a question. I'm basically just here to thank you. I work every single day with representatives and senators from Los Angeles down to Imperial Beach. And truly, you're the only one that has supported and co-sponsored any piece of legislation that we bring your way, from offshore drilling, and plastic pollution, and Plastic Pellet Free Waters Act. So really just super, super thankful. I know Oceana is just a lot of gratitude, and I know we're super excited for the Resilient Coast and Estuary Act. And taking Oceana hat off, really grateful as a military spouse to hear the great work that you're doing for veterans. My husband's active duty in one of the
I got nothing after that. I don't have much more to say other than that. Melissa said it well. She summed it up well. But I will say one last thing, which is whether you're here or whether you're watching, I really need your help. I need your help these last 77 days. So you're my ambassadors out there in the community. As we speak to voters and we knock on thousands and thousands of doors and we make thousands of calls, we leave no stone unturned, we wake up the morning after the election with no regrets, knowing we gave it our all. You're my ambassadors out there. So I need you, if you liked what you heard today, please tell your friends, your family members, your neighbors, your coworkers, maybe your crazy uncle with a red hat. Tell them all. Tell them all that this election is really important. It's important for the future of our district. It's important for the future of our democracy. And we need your help. If you're interested in volunteering, we'd love for you to volunteer. And you can. Who should they go see? What do you think? Where's Ellen is here somewhere. Go see Ellen if you're interested in volunteering, because we really need all the help we can get. The way that we flipped the seat in 2018, the way we held the seat in 2020, the way we will continue to serve in the years ahead is with support of the grassroots, with a people-powered campaign. You sure can. You want to come up here? Come on up. This is Ellen, everybody. Give it up for Ellen. Here, make sure you're talking to her.
Yeah. Hi, I am going to do a commercial right now, so that's the way it is. I'm Mike's deputy campaign manager, and when many of you don't know that with redistricting, they lopped off the entire southern part of our district, and what we gained was homes up in Orange County. So because of that, we need, and we didn't walk in 2020 because of COVID, but Mike's opponent did. So as a result, we have constituents that we have not talked to for 2 years, over 2 years. So the extent to which you can come out and help us either by walking or making phone calls, we would super appreciate it. Know that only 42 or 43% of our constituents have phone numbers listed on the voter rolls, so that's why walking is so important. So come talk to me.
Thank you. Oh, if you want to make a contribution, we take those. We take those. No, I want to thank everybody for watching. And when's our next town hall? When and where, Misty? September 10th in Carlsbad. If we don't see you in September, hopefully October, November, December, one a month for as long as I have the opportunity to serve. I hope with your help that's for a very long time to come. Thank you all for having me, everybody.